Board gay games games board games. I'm talking about board games. It's in the name of the show. Board games, and I'm currently thinking about board games, and away we go. Good morning, everyone, and today is another Bezzy breakfast board game blether. It is 10 a.m. and has become my usual routine. I am talking about board games. Now, I'm back in my garden, although it's cold enough I need my jacket. And today I am going to be talking about Pandemic Legacy Season 1. We have finished this game. I'm going to be giving you major spoilers along the way, but when I do, I'm going to flash up one of these signs, or this sign, or on the bottom of the, or this sign, or this sign. But I do want to tell you that because of the nature of this game, and because of what Pandemic Legacy is, I am going to be dealing with some potentially, some quite serious topics. I'm going to be talking about environmental sustainability, and of course, which kind of ties into the mechanisms of this game, like the whole notion of what is a legacy game. It deals with, our own role on the planet, and the whole notion of the theme of this game deals with pandemic and death. And so I will be touching upon COVID a little bit, although I normally try to stay away from such things. Morning, Alan. It is lovely to have you with us. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, I'm going to start with a little bit of positivity. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant things. Here's a thing that is brilliant. So I want to talk about warmth. I mean, I was in the shower this morning and I was thinking, my goodness, I am so happy that we have hot water. We have so much hot, our water is so hot that I mix in a little bit of cold. I mean, it's not like one of those places where you turn on only the hot and, then it's at a warm temperature. But warmth is such a good thing. And even if you're in a cold climate, we have the technology, we have the jackets, we have the jumpers, we have the shirts to warm ourselves up, and warmth is brilliant. And so that is my brilliant thing. Now I want to briefly talk about games that have been playing recently. Games that have been playing recently. What did I play yesterday? I played a variation on Medium, which is known as Convergence, as a improv game, and we were just playing that on live stream with some board game broads. It was a lovely thing, and so shout out to those people, those unnamed designers, not only the people who make published games like Pandemic Legacy, but also like Matt Leacock and Rob Davio, who have their name on the box, but also those people who innovate in such spaces as musical improv, theatre improv, and those things, because those are all wonderful games and they do deserve to be recognized. Other highlights of the day. In my past day, I guess a highlight, I started up on Twitch, and that leads me to the fact that if you're watching on YouTube, I know that most people are watching this on Facebook, but if you are watching this on YouTube, this might be the last video that I put out on YouTube. Because frankly, I think over the course of the 14 days, whatever it's been, I've had about 2 comments from actual humans on YouTube, and I just don't feel like I'm getting any engagement there. So I'm moving to Twitch, and I made an account last night, and so I'm happy with that. Also, I started some print and play versions of my games. If you want the L deck, or if you want Critic Cataclysm, and if you have a printer and you're happy to print it out on cards, now you can either get, well, normally the L deck would be a $5, but I put it half price for $2.50. Normally the Critic Cataclysm would be $2.50. It's half price for $1.25. And either you got a really bad version with Comic Sans, and that's going to be something that you can get for normally £1, but currently 50 pence. And I'm slashing all the prices for half price until, just for now, until things are a bit more back to the way that we'd like them to be. Anyway, so that is the highlights of what I've been up to, and I watched a good show called The Real Rob, and that was amusing. That's my review of it. And Board Game Broad, shout out to them. It's lovely to get together with people who just be out a bit outside your social circle, and we have this modern technology. It's always amazing and always brilliant to see people. If you have any highlights of your past day, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, I'm going to start talking about Pandemic Legacy. Now, for anyone who's just popped in, remember I'm going to talk about these things in a wee bit. So this is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Now, you've got the box, and you've got so much stuff in here. As it comes out, come on. Wow. You've got all these stickers. You've got a rule sheet, which, unlike most games, the nature of thing is that you put stickers into the rules. So this is, and then you actually write on notes as parts of the rules. And then within you've got a board, for those who don't know Pandemic, basically the whole notion of Pandemic, and I guess I should pop up that there's possibly some minor spoilers, like, actually it's all on that side. So that's the board, and that's all stuff I believe you see. And then that's kind of what the board looks like. It's a massive map of the world. And you've got these little cubes. The cubes, so just to explain how... Oh dear, sorry about that. I seem to have had some technical issues. But hopefully you're still able to see me. So I'm just talking about how base Pandemic works. So the way that basic Pandemic works is every region, yellow, red, black, and green. Is it? No, it's red, sorry. Roughly corresponding to Eastern Asia, Central Asia, Europe, and the American, African continents. You start off with a few disease cubes. This represents the disease which you want to fight. And so you might start with stuff like this. Now, every turn, at the end of your own actions, more disease cubes are going to go onto the board. For example, let's say one went to Montreal and then he didn't do anything about it. Let's say later on another one went to Montreal. At this point, when you've got more than 3, there's an outbreak. And then instead of having a 4th, disease cubes go around. And so at some point, there might be another outbreak. And this leads us to realize, oh, it goes to Montreal and then there's another outbreak. And so the disease can get worse and worse. And of course, this is something that is, very incredibly relevant in today's world. And Matt Leacock has gone on record as saying that this game has sold more than in current times. That's spoilers. This is spoilers. So what do you get in the box? So just to give you an overview, that the point of Pandemic is to cure the diseases. You don't actually eradicate them. It's just about developing a vaccine. And so to do that, and I guess that ties into a question of whether Pandemic is a reasonable game to be playing in today's current social climate with a real pandemic ravaging us. I would say that there's a real argument to be said that managing to overcome a pandemic in this fictional world is something that can, give us a sense of satisfaction. It makes us feel a little bit more, in control of events. It gives us a sense of, I'm going to beat this thing. I'm going to manage. By the way, there's a little fox over there, a little baby fox, which is now grown about as big as my arm, rummaging around with some sorts of dead meat I don't want to think about. So sometimes when things are going out of control, when our actual lives have no sense of control, when we're being toyed around with governments or whatever, we are able to play a fictional game. There's another game, Plague Inc., not just a board game, but also a video game that is where you're actually playing as the disease. And within these sorts of games, I think that Plague Inc. It's actually had record sales in March in China when this all went on, because people want to engage. They want to feel like, yes, I'm in control of this. I am going to be able to beat this pandemic. And that's why having an actual triggering topic within today's society, actually, I think to me it makes a lot of sense. Now, if you don't want to play a game that's revolving around pandemic, if you've had family members or other people who are close to you who die, and this just makes you really incredibly sad, then I totally understand you don't want to play it. But that is the game that it is, and in this game you are playing against the pandemic. So just to carry on, you've got disease cubes of all the different colors. You've got little pawns. These represent your characters, and you move your pawns around the board, and your pawns are wandering around, and then you've got to go to the research station, and the entire game is all run by these country cards. These cards, which represent the countries, tell you where disease cubes are going to go. And the pandemic can't be predicted. The virus cannot be predicted. So these cards, the disease could pop up basically anywhere. And then there's all these other cards, and we've got some more country cards. And these country cards are the good ones, which represent us being in charge of the situation. We've got major landmarks like London, Kolkata, Lima, Baghdad, and there's an interesting amount of learning about geography, because by the end of the game, I was able to say, okay, I know Essen's there and Lima's like here, I think. Well, maybe it doesn't benefit my geography that much, but there is definitely educational value. And to counteract a disease, you've got to collect so many of the same color, go to a research station, and normally it's 4 of one color, so boom, 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 I've got 4 yellows. Now, with my character, I'm going to go here because I'm the white character. I give in 4 yellows. We flip this yellow marker to show that the disease has been vaccinated. And then once it's vaccinated, boom, once all 4 things are vaccinated, then boom, we have won the game. And that is basic pandemic. Now, from now on, I am going to talk about how Pandemic Legacy differs. Pandemic Legacy, oh my goodness, this is such a different game. I would say that 70% of the way through the game, the first game is exactly the same. And then, let me bring up the possible spoiler alert. So 70% of the way through the first game, you find out that one of the diseases just cannot be cured, because it's called Coda 40 whatever. And then this disease, you just can't cure it. You can't cure it in the normal manner. It's not easy to do. You've not got the science. So what you now need to do is cure everything else. And actually, it turns out that the first game is easier than a normal game of Pandemic, but it's got this massive twist to tell you, hey, this is not just a normal game of Pandemic. Now, second game, it gets crazier and crazier. You've got these... how else does it differ that you know straight off the bat? Let me show you some of the character cards. I think this is something that we had right at the start. So every person has these different roles. For example, the dispatcher, you will probably know that from basic Pandemic. And the dispatcher allows you to move people around. We played the dispatcher exactly once and never again, which you write in little notes, which is really nice because this means that we've already talked about how note writing can lead to little mementos. And apparently this person, this is a bit of a spoiler, but this is a person that you get later on, and then I played him only once in December, and some of the characters, like this one, was a bit more popular. Dr. Myris, the quarantine specialist. Some of the characters you will know from the expansions. So if you played all the other expansions of Pandemic, you would recognize the quarantine specialist and whatnot. You would, as you go through, some of the characters will start... Now, I guess this is major spoilers. I don't know, whatever. So some of the characters will start letting you beat the pseudo-randomly selected Coda virus. And so then they start allowing you to build vaccines against it. At some point, you get the little miniatures that turn everyone into, it's almost turns into a zombie film, which, to be honest, this whole notion of people becoming zombies and they are called the infected and you want to try and cure them as much as you can. And so these little miniatures that you get in the game, which for us it was all over Asia, but and then these vaccine stations that you get right at the end where you can develop vaccines and then you have to bring out the vaccine. So if you play through the entire game of Pandemic Legacy, it is going to be a narrative of victory against the disease. Along the way, you get such important characters as the researcher who we played with basically every month, and allows you to cure diseases with a little bit less information. Oh no, that's the scientist. The researcher is good for passing around knowledge, and I mean, I guess that passing around knowledge, that kind of brings us to mind about the current way of the world. It's all about passing on knowledge. And then we have Julie Parrish, who, you know, every time you have a new character, you get to name them, and this forms a bond. Some of the characters, like the Colonel, we literally never played. We've got Bob the Builder, who we played like about 3 times, and Dr. Soraya, who was the generalist, who we played only once and never again. There's all these characters, and towards the end of the game, and Dr. House is the person who cures things. And then right at the end, during the game, you will get more and more objectives to do. Now, I am going to say that some of the cards I have ripped up. Now, what makes this whole game function? Oh, there's some kind of ripped up cards. Oh, yeah. We had some major, this is major spoilers. So someone might betray you. And yeah, there might, and there's major information that you get, a little note that makes you feel more immersed in the world. So it's like, with redacted information, and then you read it, and then you're learning that this whole thing, so this is talking about the overall story. It's a story, it's kind of a B-movie story, where this whole virus, it's not a natural virus. It was apparently made as a bioengineered, and this leads us to wonder, I guess there's, I really hope that people don't end up playing this and then transcribing that onto the real world and start thinking, oh my god, this COVID is a bioengineered thing, because that's ridiculous. But this game is very much a schlocky B-movie. You can probably tell where the plot is going to go. You know that you're all going to win at the end. You know that that's what the game wants you to do. And towards the end of the game, there are extra mechanisms. There's this search mechanism, which you need to discard certain cards in certain places, and then you move a little counter along. So you're not this token, but like the counter would go boom, 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 and then the counter of where you've got to get to would run away. And it's an interesting search mechanism. Now, every month, you've got these cards that say, hey, this month, October, this is what you've got to do. And you've got scratch and reveal cards where you scratch it and it says, hey, the paranoid soldier gives you this. Open package 6. And then you get to open the package, because it's in the box. Now that I've taken out most of the stuff, when you open it, all these boxes would be closed. And you'd see, oh my god, there's 8 boxes. What's going on in them? And there's an entire 4 dossiers full of stuff that little cards and stickers that you'd put into your roll sheet. So let's talk about the changes with Pandemic. Let's get that properly out of the way. So changes with Pandemic. You've got relationships. When new characters come up, you are able to start having some sorts of relationships where they are maybe family with each other or enemies. And if they are both within the same game, cool things happen. That is nice. Later on, you've got the search tracks that starts off. Later on, there's the military gets involved, and the military is actually evil in this game, which I quite like, little bits of anti-military. And there's something about the vaccine factories. If you've got vaccine factories and you get a whole bunch of them, more than you probably want. Starting turns, they're called the faded, not the infected. And if you are in the same place as faded figures, just by being close to them for a sustained period of time, if you end your turn there, you will get infected. And I think this obviously talks to us about, keeping your distance. And in a way, this game could be quite educational for some people. I don't think that it's going to tell you, hey, stop this, but it does tell you how easily something can infect and grow out of control, how there can be outbreaks and crazy stuff, and how isolation is super important. Players may use the shuttle flight to move around on your turns. There's quarantines that you if you manage to quarantine stuff, then stuff can't transmit so easily. If you build roadblocks, because people aren't moving, then later on in the game, you've got these roadblocks that stop things from moving around. And you can see, if I turn you to where most of the spoiler parts of the board is, so just to show you, we had this entire part was ravaged by the infected, but we managed to vaccinate everywhere, which is one of the key things that you need to do in the game. Later on in the game, once the military is terrible, you're able to start sabotaging those military bases. Where are the military bases? Which are the other types of building, these green buildings. So you've got 3 buildings: the research stations where you make things, the military bases where at the start they seem to be quite good, they seem to be on your side, and later on, these places where they actually build a vaccine. That comes right at the end of the game. Accelerated incubation, that's the thing that you can do to make even more vaccines. Faded cities never recover. It's just hard because they're... And I guess that's what this game reminds us, that yes, there is this major pandemic going on, but there's all the other stuff. There's the blue disease, whatever you call it. And we called it the Pax 28 Days Later virus and the Dark Plague. And you convert adjacent cities. So as soon as this game has stickers on it. So just to clarify, this sticker means that if disease cubes go here, it's not just the, wishy-washy little cubes. It's the major people you're going to get major infected people here, and that is harder to cure. And so this is a way that the escalation ramps up, not just within one game, but within multiple games, within a whole series of games. And this is amazing. This whole sticker technology, let's talk about... Actually, let me finish going through the rules. So military bases, vaccine factories, we've talked about that. And at the end of the rules, oh my God, I need to talk about this. This is brilliant. This is a wonderful, wonderful catch-up mechanism. So this catch-up mechanism, basically what happens is you say, do you win or do you lose? As you see, we won our first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games, and then we lost. And every time you win, the sorts of unfunded events, you go down by a couple. So you get these unfunded events, things like this, that allow you to do nice things instead of just getting a card. The cards that you pick up are always good for you. And funded events. So you've got some funding off the government, and it kind of brings in this kind of opposition between you as the scientists against the government, which, frankly, there's a lot of parallels in our current situation with the scientists kind of being against the governments, where the government doesn't want to give you all the money, because if they gave you all the money, then you would have such an easy game. You would be able to remove disease cubes and take extra turns and have a more resilient population and airlift people and give aid and, do all sorts of things. But then the government isn't giving you that stuff. Come on, government, why aren't you helping me? And so for that reason, you start off with 4 things, and then if you win, you go down to 2, 2, 0, 0, 0. And then we lost, so we went up for 2, and then we won a few times, and then we went down to 0. And so if you lose in the game, you get more of these nice cards. If you win, then you get fewer. And that is, in a summary, how the game of Pandemic works. Now, let me hide that and let me address some of the comments. So, thank you very much, Umberto. Good morning. We are talking about Pandemic Legacy. It is all about Pandemic Legacy today. This is a rambling review of Pandemic Legacy. I will not stop talking about Legacy. In fact, I should start talking about Legacy even more. So, Pandemic Legacy, what is Legacy? Let me take a step back. There's no spoilers here. What is Legacy? So, Legacy is a system that was invented by Rob Davio whilst Rob was working for Hasbro. When Rob was working on a whole bunch of games, including Cluedo, Trivial Pursuit, and Risk, and then Rob thought, hey, why do all these people go into this mansion to have a dinner party when people keep murdering people? What's up with that? In Cluedo, also known as Clue in the USA. And so Rob invented this system where, hey, let's make a game that evolves. And then Rob came up with, I think, two major parts that have to be part of a legacy game. What a legacy game is it's a campaign game. It's a game that as you play, things change and there's a sequence thing of events. So in a legacy game, game 2 is going to be different to game 1. Now, to enforce this, what you've got stickers. So you can see all of these are stickers on the board. You don't start with this. So I guess I should put up a minor spoiler. Minor spoilers. And just to clarify, are you spoiling the game? Yes, I am completely spoiling the game. Pay attention to the spoilers below. That's totally fair. If you don't want to watch this, then don't watch this. And thank you very much, Jess. I'm aware of your personal situation, and thank you very much. And I hope that, let me know if I overstep any boundaries. So anyway, so what is Legacy? So I'm going to keep talking about Legacy. And so Rob Davio invented Legacy, made a game called Risk Legacy. In this game, Risk Legacy, there's two major innovations. Firstly, you put stickers on the board. These stickers are never meant to be taken off. So that means that the game evolves, and in one game, for example, you might say, okay, I want to fortify my city so that people attacking me can't get to me as much. And then the game evolves, and in game number 10, that one sticker that you put in game number 1 is still there. Secondly, there's these almost unlockable achievements that are reminiscent of Xbox Live achievements, which this is where they originated, I believe, on the Xbox 360, which was really the popularization of the modern day achievements unlocked meme, and here it's all about that surprise, but not only are they achievements, but it's new possible content. As you go through the game, not only do you have your stickers, but you've got this unlockable content. And so in Risk Legacy, on the front of the boxes, it said, okay, open this as soon as you've put down your second major city. Open this as soon as you've used 3 nuclear bombs. Open this as soon as you've done X. And that might mean that you open them slowly, or you might open them quickly. Now, Pandemic Legacy added another major innovation to the game. And I want to talk about, this deck, which is the deck that says, stop, do not draw any more cards, read this just before you set up your first game in August. So what this does is this entire game represents one terrible year. And so what this game does is it starts off in January, it finishes in December. If you win a game, then you progress. If you lose a game, then you work extra in the months in between. And it kind of, again, goes back to the real life paradigm of, well, come on, if we're doing this, why not keep working? Come on, we can get through this. But obviously, a game's desires are different to the real world desires. Now, let's take a moment to step back and contrast the difference. And I'll just pop up my trigger warning banner. So this game, just to contrast things between this game and the real world. Firstly, in a game, you are trying to make things difficult for the players. You don't want to make things as simple as possible, because if it was a case of press a button and then you win, then that's a terrible game. And so there's a big difference between product design, something like a light switch, where you want it to be obvious where the light switch goes on, and something like a computer, you want it to be obvious how to use the computer. Even within software, you want it to be easy to sharpen your photos, or to do to cause a Gaussian blur, or to whatever. But within a game, yes, you want the rules to be understood, but you want the rules to be tricky. You want there to be some challenge. You know, in a strategy game, you want people to be able to consider what they are doing and then talk about it and then decide whether they're going to overcome things or not. So let's just talking about the difference, carrying on a little bit about this massive difference. With a game, when you're trying to make people have interesting decisions within a game, what that means is that, yes, you're going to say, okay, the government gives you less money when you're winning, and when you're losing, the government is going to give you more money, because that's a brilliant way, that's a simple way to say, okay, the game's going to self-adjust to the level at which it's interesting for you. It's ideally not too difficult, you're not feeling overwhelmed, and it's not too simple. If it's too simple, then they take away things and they ramp up the difficulty. I also want to quickly talk about the notion of what people started calling solitaire by committee, which was a term invented by Seth Jaffe. Now, Seth Jaffe talks about the difference between cooperative games, where you're multiple people and there's a restriction on communication. Maybe you've got Hanabi, where you can't talk about what you've got in your hands, and you've got space alerts or something else with a timed bit of pressure, or escape from the temple. Where compared to a game like this, where Pandemic Legacy, we were able to talk about our first turn before we even started the game. We would normally talk about our first turn for a good hour. We would be talking about, okay, exactly where do we want to set up? Okay, this is how the diseases came out. Okay, what's our action plan? And we're not going to get started until we know exactly what we want to do. And this is the game. The game isn't in, everyone doing our own thing and then mashing it all together. The game is about finding out how we can work together. And in a game without any restrictions on communication, without any time pressure, you can take your time and you can say, well, let's just play until we can sort of all agree on what is the best thing to do. And you might have some stronger personalities on the table, but they need to be learning, in real life, to let other personalities kind of speak up and say, hey, what do you think? Do you think that we should do this, or do you think that's a reasonable plan? And listen to what they have to say. But as long as there's at least 2 or 3 of you having that discussion of what's the best thing to do, how can we get rid of this? Do we have time to totally eradicate this disease? And what this game also does is it teaches you the massive difficulty between going from a vaccination to eradication. And vaccination is relatively simple. You just need a bit more time. As long as things don't go completely out of control, you will be able to vaccinate things. But eradication, oh my goodness, the disease keeps coming. And just because you vaccinate it doesn't mean that you get it out to everyone really quickly, because you've still got to go around giving people these vaccines. And so there's so much work to do. And I think that is possibly a warning for us to remember, that even after a vaccine is created, if we actually want to go for eradication, it's going to take, firstly, concerted effort, and secondly, a lot more work. Anyway, getting back to the, and this is possible spoilers, getting back to the major innovation of Pandemic Legacy. What you have is you've got this sequence of cards, and after each card, it says, hey, draw this card just before you set up your game in March. And it says, hey, this is what's happening, and you need to complete these 2 objectives. And so then you open these circles, and you open and resolve circles number X43, and 5. And that constantly drip feeds information and new rules through the game at a measured rate. Now, what this means is that the game is fairly linear. There's no major diversions possible through your actions. There's not a lot of player agency in this game. I would like within each game, yes, there is player agency, but from a big global perspective, no, this is just stuff that's going to happen to you. And in August, what happens? Well, this character appears and destroy this other thing, and then you open 2 things. And if you win a game in whatever month, then you get a little bonus that you scratch off. And I've got the January thing here, which is no spoilers. So January, you know the drill. We've got 4 viruses causing problems. You've got it's all good. But then as soon as the second epidemic card's been resolved, boom, that's when one of the viruses goes and it can't be taken. It just can't be cured. And yeah, this game is the story of a virus. This game is the story of a virus that's called Coda. And this game is the story of a virus that was, let me put to the possible major spoilers. So this game is the story of a virus that is bioengineered. And you learn that. And, okay, this is major spoilers. So throughout the game, at one point, you will get a card, potentially, where you find that someone that you loved, that you actually played as a character, that you maybe even put upgrades into, that at the end of every game, you get to upgrade points, and at the end of every game, you get to upgrade your characters. And so then you've played this game, and then you never finish it, and then the character actually gets ripped up because they've gone away, and they have betrayed you. And you think, oh my God, how could someone do this? And if you play this game, and if I hadn't just told you this, for us, it came as a shock. It was, oh my God, what's just happened here? And let's talk about, is this game good to play a second time? So, is this game good to play a second time? That is a major question. Is this game good to play a second time? I'm going to answer Alan's question. No, the stickers are not removable. And all the stickers are by design permanent. You put them on the board. You literally rip up things. You write on cards. I've got this card. I've already shoved stickers onto it. I could not play this copy of the game again. That does lead me to the environmental impact issue, and I've got also the issue of would I play this game a second time. Let me address the environmental impact issue first. So, should we be making one-time play games? Should we be making games that you play one time and then they need to be thrown away? It leads us from one-use plastics. Plastic bags. Surely, hopefully, we reuse these plastic bags. Hopefully, cotton buds, that's something that you just can't reuse. And so I do sometimes use cotton buds. I don't feel great about it. But, yeah, that's... it's something that we should be trying to avoid on non-renewable plastics. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff in this game. There's all these cubes. There's all these little miniature things. I'm probably going to put these after this game. I'm going to be honest. I'm probably going to just recycle these unless... yeah, I'm going to recycle these. And then all of these I'm going to reuse in my own prototypes and stuff. Other people... what do you do with this game? You just put it in the bin. Now, there's some cards, like this card, could be absolutely recycled. But as soon as you've got a sticker, can that be recycled? Probably not. And there's an argument to be made that, there's games, including the Unlock series, which are single-play games. But with the Unlock series, once you play them, you can sell them on to someone else. Now, that's... arguably a better way to do things, but I am going to say that there is some emotions that you can only get through the legacy aspect. Now, what does the legacy aspect add to this game? What does it allow you to do? What the legacy aspect allows you to do, and let's put major spoiler. So we're tilting this down, so you can see all the stickers that I had on this horrible, ravaged parts of the world. So this is where we had a research station, which this was just our player agency, and this is where we had this. Definitely major spoilers. So this is where we had our little military bases, but then we managed to sabotage them. These green icons mean that this is where there was major faded figures and the major infected people from Coda, but the little orange stickers means that we managed to send out a vaccine, so no one else in that city was, suffering from it ever again. The little numbered stickers, that's a new mechanism that I didn't even get into. There's so much going on in this game. I mean, literally, the rules are 16 pages, and it doesn't sound like a lot. And when you start the game, there is a little bit of empty space, even when you finished. But when you start the game, there's even more empty space. But then as the game goes on, you get these stickers, and there is so much going on in this game. You've got these numbers, which showed that this, because there was an outbreak, people started incredibly dark in an incredible sense. We managed to contain everything into one continent by setting up these major roadblocks, and so no planes or anything could get through these red lines, and so the major disease could never go. So that was something that we were able to get into by containing it, and that teaches us the value of containing disease. And there's so much, I mean, I say this so often, but there's so much going on in this game. It reflects so much in our current world, and oh my goodness, should you play this game? Frankly, there's a lot of reasons not to play this game. Should you play this game? This game is going to be incredibly distressing for a lot of people. Even talking about it, it's making me upset, frankly. Normally, like last year, the world was so different, and there was an element of triumph. But I'm going to be honest, right now, if we were in a situation where we could have one household join our household, and feel like we were being sensible and we were being kind of okay, then I would say absolutely we would start season 2. So this game, this is not a spoiler, this is just my overall opinion. I enjoyed this game so much. I enjoyed this game so much that I would absolutely start season 2. Would I play it again? No, I would not choose to play this game again. I have already experienced this story. I have lived through this story. I would love to experience it secondhand. I would love to have some other people play the game. If I moved to, let's say in 2 years' time, I moved to Korea, South Korea, and let's say in South Korea, I'm playing with some people and I introduce them to board games, and then I say, hey, do you know Pandemic Legacy? And then they say no. I would say, hey, you know what? I'll get Pandemic Legacy for you, and I'll just kind of sit in the corner, not actually doing anything, just reading my own book or working on my stuff, but kind of just experiencing all the stuff that happens to you, because it's such a good narrative, but it is incredibly linear. That is what I want to say. And the deck, not this deck, this deck, the spoiler deck, the deck that you've got to keep in perfect order, and it actually has little numbers, so it helps you keep it in order. But this deck is so lovely that it says, okay, every time there's a month, you take off these cards, and then you take off these cards. And that makes a good story. There is a good story. There is a good story. There's an escalation, there's a twist, and then obviously new missions happen. Obviously there's new characters. This is not a spoiler. I guess it's obviously there's new characters happening. Obviously there's new things happening, some of which you'll use, some of which you won't use. And that means that throughout the course of the game, you get the joy of having this narrative flow as well as the ludological flow. And so going back to the major spoilers alerts, so what stickers allow you to do, the reason for Legacy is that it allows me to look at this board and say, this is all the things that's unfolded. And even if I throughout the rest of this game, I'd probably keep this board, just the board, because it's a bit smaller. And this is a thing that we all signed. Like, that's my signature, and then I think that's Chris, whatever. And we can say, this is where we did this. These are the cities that are expanding. In game one, this became a little bit unstable. And then if we'd carried on top of a one, you put a two, and then you put a three, and then you put a four. And thankfully, none of our cities completely fell. And there's that, it's easy to take notes. And so all of these things that I was talking about would theoretically be possible with an elaborate notebook, and then you put different tokens on. But imagine that world where you put little tokens on everything, and then you've got to spend about 10 minutes setting up each game at the start. That would be boring. And so I'm going to say, I think that, yes, there's value in legacy games, and I'm not going to say this game should not exist because of ecological reasons, but I will say that if people start thinking of legacy games as a default, because for a while there's been a big boom in legacy games like Betrayal at the House on the Hill Legacy, Machikoro Legacy, basically all of these done by Rob Davio, but we didn't play test this at all Legacies. Blank, although Blank's a bit different because I don't think it has stickers. I think it's only got writing on bits of cards, and so Blank's quite different. But so all these games are coming out, and I'm thinking I would prefer there to be fewer games that have legacy elements, because let's talk about things. I have mass-produced games before. I have paid money to have about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about some in the region of 7 to 10,000 games mass-produced. Now that's a lot. Now within each of those games, I had a bit of plastic around the cards. Is that necessary? Now going forwards, at least for the L deck, the next categorical deck, I've started thinking, okay, I'm going to take a step back. And there's that responsibility. And if you're making a game that is not only it's not being recyclable, but it's in effect single use. Because whilst Yogi, yes, it's made out of plastic, but people can continue playing it for years to come. But this game, it is single use. And there is so much stuff here. I mean, it's a fairly big box. And so is this game good enough to merit its ecological footprint? I would say yes, just because this game is really good. This game is so good, and any argument against Legacy should be taken a little bit separately, especially because I noticed that running out of time, and I've got so much more to say about this game. Wow, there's a lot. I need a drink. Any questions that you've got, please ask me questions in the comments. Okay, so the question of would I play this game again? I think I've already addressed this. That's no, I would not want to. Is this game good enough to involve Legacy? Yes, it is. Now let's talk about the fact that this game is cooperative versus competitive. Let's talk about the fact that when you've got stickers, there's a lot of Legacy components that you might just never use. And to one aspect, that feels, okay, it's a bit unsatisfying that you've got all these special effects that you never quite manage to use. In another sense, it's incredibly good that you've got meaningful choices. It's not just a case of, okay, you're going to do all these upgrades, but then you get to choose the order. There are a lot of upgrades that you're just going to not use because some of them are not as good as other upgrades. Now, let me show you a major spoiler. And this is the last objectives of the game. Because we've only got 10 minutes to go, so I'm just going to talk about the last game in this entire campaign. So I also want to, if I could have found. So throughout the game, you've got all these pandemic, epidemic cards, which make the pandemic worse and worse, and you've got all these other I'm looking for. Basically, you've got. If I look at the rule sheets, you will be able to see. You start off with objectives, and the objectives have a very particular graphic design. Now, the objectives match the graphic design of the cards like this, but during the last game, once you start realizing that everything is wrong, you start getting cards that look a bit more like this. Now, this card comes in the same deck as this card. Now, you can see how they utilize graphic design to give you a complete sense of the escalation and the change in narrative flow. So functionally, there is zero difference. What's happened right now? Here, you are being given orders by the government. You are being given orders to contain this disease. Here, you are being given orders by someone secretly who is on your side and actually helping you. You are working almost with the government as an enemy. And that is where everything changes with these censored messages. This is where the game throws you on your head and you're thinking, oh my God, everything's different. Where the final objective of the game, and literally just turn off now, I'm not going to worry about my viewer counts. The final objective in the game, I've warned you enough, is twofold. Firstly, vaccinate every faded city. Secondly, find and destroy the secret stockpile of Coda in Atlanta. So basically, in this game, it was the US government that was trying to do this terrible thing to people of the world. I don't think there's any real-world political commentary here. It's just a vaguely arbitrary choice that they made. But having said that, there are no arbitrary choices in this game because there is Essen here, and the only reason that Essen is on the map, I'm going to hypothesize, is because it's a major board game convention. Anyway, so I want to dissect the last game of this entire campaign. So, we have built up this world. We have built, and I also want to analyze the final. Let me just show you how many stickers. And so we have built up this map of all these cities, of all these countries and cities that we've been protecting. We have got these actions, and he starts off with an action list, and then you get another action list that with 6 new actions on it. And when you've got these final cities, that is a massive sense of achievement. Vaccinating every city, that feels like you've saved humanity. That feels like, wow, we have managed to do it. We have managed to save the people. And so I would say that at the end, these are brilliant. And there is a massive sense of success. There is a massive sense of having overcome odds. And the narrative flow, everything works. And it's not meant to be surprising you just for the sake of surprising you. It's not meant to be, hey, here's a non sequitur. It's meant to be, hey, here's something that potentially you might have been able to see coming, but it's actually, yeah, just an exciting development. Now, Alan Outson has one question that I'll get to in a couple. Actually, I'm just going to answer that. Would I play Pandemic after playing Legacy? Frankly, I'm going to say I was never a big fan of Pandemic. I liked Pandemic, okay. Like, I'd be willing to play it. I would never choose to play Pandemic. So Pandemic isn't my game, but I absolutely adore Pandemic Legacy because every single game, let me put to minor spoilers, every single game there's developments, there's new rules, not every single game, but there's a sense of escalation, and there's maybe new actions that you can do. And so there's new considerations. There's never a sense of, okay, I know exactly what you should do, and so we're going to do that. Or someone else has figured out the game exactly. We are all in this experience together. And that is the fundamental key of Pandemic Legacy. We are all in it together. We're learning together. We're watching these things unfold. And if we fail, we'll get another go at the month, because you're allowed 2 goes at each month if you fail. If we succeed, then we've done well together and we celebrate. And it's all about negotiating that. Negotiating. It's all about learning how to negotiate. And fundamentally, Pandemic Legacy is not a game where the star, yes, the villain is the virus, but the star is you. The star is not just you as individuals, but the star is your teamwork. The focus of the game is, how are you negotiating? How are you talking together? Are you letting one person make all the decisions? Are you actually working together? Are you like talking for an hour or so before you even make your first move? And then you get, and so even those people who enjoyed Pandemic before playing Pandemic Legacy said, yeah, we probably wouldn't play it again, because we played 12, 13, 14, 15. We played 15 games of it. We feel like we've moved beyond Pandemic. Maybe we would play Pandemic with one of the expansions, but I don't think any of us would play Pandemic ever again. As a suggestion, even the person who loved it and had their own copy said, yeah, I've just bought Dead of Winter, another good game. But right, so let's get rid of that comment. So let me talk about the biggest possible spoiler, which is right at the end of the game. What is the last card that you draw? And let me bring this closer to me. The last card that you draw is the epilogue, where it says, hey, this is what happened. You managed to do this thing. So first, the fate of humanity was in your cards. How did you do? Calculate your score and flip this over card to see what happened after December. So in this card, this is where the game gives you a score. Before here, it has always been win or lose. And win or lose, and we managed to ostensibly win December, and we were so happy that you can tell by my increasingly large writing of the word win, because it gets more difficult. It is more difficult as the campaign goes on. Now, how do they score you right at the end? So you can see we got 789 points out of a potential 1,000, which sounds really good, except that the best possible score is 801, and it was so. Some points for each game that you win in the first half of the month, 40 points, half points for the games that you win in the second half of the month. That makes perfect sense. And that's the total. So we scored 400 out of 480. Some number of points for each panic level 0 or 1. 5 points. 2 points for each panic level 2 or 3. And 1 point for each panic level 4. That makes perfect sense. That fits the narrative flow. That makes perfect sense. I am happy with that. Bonus. 100 bonus points for vaccinating every faded city. That makes perfect sense because you are told to do it. It is your objective that I told you about. And so that makes perfect sense. You are warned. You've got to do this. 100 points for destroying the stockpile in Atlanta. Again, that was what you were told to do in December. 80 points for not having military bases on the board. And this is where I got really annoyed, because even if we got, I think we had 1 or 2 military bases remaining, and even if we had 20, even if we had 12 points, or even if we didn't come to close, it's that 0 or all or nothing nature of it that really annoyed us, that we felt 80 points or 0. So if you have 1 military base on the board, you get 0. You don't get 40. You don't get 10 points even for having 2 military bases on the board. You just get 0. And that is such a kick into the teeth. And that really annoyed us. And minus 100 points if you all opened package 8. just to explain, package 8, I never talked about that. Right at the start of the game, it tells you to put this sticker on it which says, open the package if you lose 4 games in a row. Now, this is a wonderful mechanism. What this means is that if you're losing 2 games in a row, you don't feel too bad because you're like, well, at least we're not losing 3 or 4. If you're losing 3, we'll be like, well, if we lose a 4th, then at least we'll get some help. In the end, opening this, the help, it helps you a little bit. It's going to probably something that will hinder your campaign, but your campaign's probably messed up at that point anyway, but it will definitely help you win individual games. So yeah, it's a really nice element, this. And yeah, if you don't have to do it, if you don't win 2 in a row, then if you don't lose 4 in a row, sorry, if you do lose 4 in a row, you lose 100 points, which makes sense. If Team Bravo came to your end, you lose 200 points. So some people have also complained about this one, that, okay, during the course of the game, at the end, you've got to find certain items. So you have to, yeah, and this is the card when it's you've been played, this massive twist. So during the end of the game, you've got to do these searches, and each search normally gets 2 goals to do it, and then 2 months down the line, it says, well, you didn't manage to do it, and here's a new thing to do. With Team Bravo, if you're even missing 1 out of the 3 key points of information, and you would have potentially only had 1 month to do it, some people said that they were massively disappointed, that they felt they lose 200 points through no fault of their own just because of that small bit. And then, so that's where you get to these things. And then as a final epilogue for the game, to have this massive game that you've spent probably, let's say we played 15 games, we spent maybe 2 hours per game, 30 hours. So you've spent 30 hours playing, and now it's like, okay, what happens next? All that happens is this 2.5 lines, and that is our result. And that feels a bit underwhelming, frankly. And so I would say, yes, the end of the game is underwhelming, and the end of the game is irritating. I would have preferred there to be, for this to be maybe 3 options rather than 5, and for them to be a bit more written out. That was a major disappointment. Okay, now let me get rid of this. So, spoiler alert, thank you, Bez. I love some of the features of Legacy, particularly the campaign aspects, making subsequent games easier or harder. And also, Alan says that the post has just arrived, and I'm glad that you are happy with that, and I hope that you have a lots of fun with the L deck. Anyway, going back to, let me get rid of this. So overall, what was my overall opinion of the game? Well, I liked it. I loved it. Did it deserve to be #1 game in the world as voted for by Boardgame Geek users for quite a significant period of time? Yeah, sure. It is one of the best gaming experiences I have ever had. I mean, I have had wonderful game experiences where, with games that aren't really games in a box with a designer on the back. And I never actually did it's 14 plus. Yeah, sure, I would agree. That seems reasonable. 2 to 4 people. Yeah, I would say try and play it with more people if you can, because it is all about the shared experience. And we even played it with 5, and we had 2 people just become 1 human. So McCall and Chris played the role of 1 character. So in terms of game mechanisms, we were playing as if we were 4 people, but we had 5 people discussing stuff. And so I would say having played it, I hypothesize that it's a better experience with more people, because ultimately, yes, Pandemic Legacy is a game all about the virus, but it's also a game about the cooperation, about the teamwork, about the working together, about the learning to communicate. And it says 60 minutes. I would say that there's well enough meat on those bones to play it for like 2 hours. And there's so much brilliance in this game. Would I play it again? Hell no. Would I want to watch someone else playing it again whilst I was kind of in the background? Absolutely. I would. Yes, I am evangelizing about this game. Absolutely. Is it worth the environmental impact? That's a question for everyone. I mean, everything has environmental impact, and that's the way it is. And this is a really important game in the world. When both from a thematic point of view and for its current world relevance, and also from a point of view of mechanisms, this game gave way to Gloomhaven, which is now the new number one board game on. Once this was number one, so many people tried to make their own legacy games. There are like Charterstone came after it from another company. I'm trying to think of other games that neither Rob nor Matt, well, Matt Leacock's only been involved in this one. So this is from Matt Leacock, designer of Model Pandemics, and Rob Davio, basically designer of pretty much every legacy game out there. Let's talk about the fact that it's cooperative as opposed to competitive. The fact that it is cooperative, it gives it such a different dynamic that you can experience this linear narrative that is a bit arguably simplistic, but you get to enjoy it and enjoy the new things together. There's wonderful joy in that. And I love this game. If you have a lot of joy for, if you feel like this is a topic that you are able to enjoy, if you feel like you are able to play a game that starts off kind of medium weight complexity and then adds more and more rules, becoming actually after 12 to 24 games quite a tricky, intense game where you're going to be spending potentially a couple of hours per game, then I would say yes, absolutely play this game. It's going to be in the same way that by adding on more time, a TV show like Skins or I've never watched Breaking Bad, but compare Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones to a short film, a film that might be 2 hours or 3 hours long, or even a trilogy. I mean, okay, if you've got like 9 parts to it, like Star Wars, okay, that's starts to become a different thing. But when there's a film and you've got, or if it's a single game, or if it's a book, you've got a nice experience, you've got a nice flow. But having the power of having something that builds up over multiple games, that is the power of a campaign game. And you don't need a legacy game to have all that emotional growth and ramifications, but you do want to have the stickers just make it a bit simpler and take care of things so you don't need to set out things. That's me. I don't see you've got no more questions, so I want to say thank you everyone for watching. Thank you so much, Alan Oughton, Jess Sankey, Umberto Ferrese, and it's been wonderful having all your comments. If anyone has been watching this on YouTube, as I've said before, tonight is going to be my last live stream on YouTube, and then I'm moving over to Twitch. I'm going to keep putting these on Facebook because I can put them on 2 things at the same time. Now, I hope you are all having a wonderful day. Stay safe if you can. Stay at home. Stay sane. Stay strong. Be brilliant. And I hope you have something to look forward to. I am looking forward to having Chris over. We're going to be working together. Basically, it is worked where we've not seen each other. We're basically doing a bit of work, finishing off all the Kitty Cataclysm stickers, or hopefully going to be sending the order to the printing company this afternoon. So I'm super excited for that. And for now, bye, 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye, bye, Bye bye. It's almost time to go. Do 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 do. Bye bye. Bye bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye bye. Bye bye. This is the bye bye song. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye bye. Bye bye. This is the end of the show. Bye bye. Bye bye. And now it's time to go. Bye bye, everyone.